Gunnar sat at the head of the table in the workshop's conference room, the space buzzing with the low hum of anticipation. Around him sat the pack, his trusted team, each with a different skill set and role that had forged them into an unbreakable unit. A few days had passed since Reagan had returned from headquarters with the proposal for Echo Division to work with Homeland Security. Now there was a new matter at hand that needed the pack's attention. Sophia had arrived unannounced that morning, a rare occurrence, and one that signalled urgency. After receiving word from an old informant, she had come with vital information. Gunnar's face was hard as stone as he recounted what Sophia had shared. "Apparently there's a place called the Shadow Realm Bar, right here on our doorstep," Gunnar began, his voice level but his gaze intense. Sophia's contact, someone she's been working with for a while, spilled everything. This bar isn't just a hole in the wall for a few supernatural misfits. It's a full-on hub where beings from all over come to relax, trade, and network. DeSera raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "So, a supernatural bar hidden in plain sight? And we're just hearing about it now?" "That's the thing," Gunnar replied. "It's meant to stay hidden. This isn't the kind of place just anyone walks into. You need supernatural blood or a special invitation. Our informant is a creature himself, something that Sophia had suspected but couldn't confirm until now. His name is Shade. He's the one who gave us the scoop on this place." The pack exchanged glances, each processing the information in their own way. Derren leaned back in his chair, his usual casual demeanour tempered with curiosity. "So this Shade guy is informing on his own people. Sounds like he's got his own agenda." Gunnar nodded. "Exactly. He's looking out for himself first, as always. But he's been helpful to Sophia in the past. According to him, the Shadow Realm Bar is where beings go to get away from human eyes and blend in. It's a marketplace too. Artifacts and rare items are exchanged there, things we wouldn't want falling into the wrong hands." Eli's ears perked up and she leaned forward, her elven curiosity piqued. "Are we going to just walk in? I imagine if these beings hear our names, they'll be on guard. We've dealt with a lot of their kind before. Some might even recognize us." "That's what I'm thinking," Gunnar said, locking eyes with Eli and Derren. "You two are the least recognizable among us in the supernatural world. The rest of us have been around longer, and if our names are brought up, we'll draw attention fast. Derren, you've got a way with people that tends to keep things balanced. Your attitude might help keep things neutral. And Eli, well, if things get out of hand, I know you'll be able to handle yourself." Derren smirked, but his gaze was thoughtful. "So, you want us to go undercover, scope out the place, and see what's what?" "Exactly. We need intel on who frequents this place and what kinds of items are being traded. Sophia thinks Black Dawn might be trying to infiltrate it, but we don't have any solid evidence yet. If they're in there, we need to know, but be subtle. We can't risk them catching on to us just yet." Eliana, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "This bar isn't just a casual hangout. The true heart of it is hidden in the back, accessible only by a doorway that responds to supernatural energy. Beyond that door, creatures can drop their human disguises. They'll be in their true forms, free from human scrutiny. They operate under a strict truce, though. It's the only place where rivals can meet without tearing each other apart." DeSera glanced over at Eli. "You sure you're up for it? This place sounds intense." Eli's expression hardened and she nodded. "I've faced worse. If it helps keep us all safe, I'm in." "Good," Gunnar said. "And Derren, try to keep a low profile. The last thing we need is a confrontation. Eliana, I want you on standby. If anything goes sideways, we'll need a quick exit." Eliana inclined her head. "Understood. I can set up a portal close to the area just in case." Gunnar leaned back, his gaze sweeping across the room. "This mission is crucial. We're walking into a den full of beings that would love to see us fall. But if Black Dawn is there, we need to know what they're after. Eli, Derren, keep your heads down and ears open. This isn't about fighting, it's about gathering information." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "And remember, We're in this together. No one gets left behind. The drive to the Shadow Realm bar was a typical Derren production. Music blasting, upbeat chatter, and his signature Stealth Mission soundtrack booming through the speakers. He kept calling it a date, while Eli repeatedly reminded him it was strictly business. "Feels like a date to me," Derren said, grinning as he glanced over at her. "Just you, me, and a little covert operation. What could go wrong?" "Everything, if you're involved," Eli quipped, smirking. She looked out the window, eyeing the bar as they approached. "Just remember, we're here to blend in. Don't blow our cover." They parked the Wolfmobile outside a nondescript dive bar on the outskirts of town. Eli surveyed the exterior, trying to sense any hidden magical wards or lingering energies, but everything seemed mundane. Once inside, they slipped into the shadowy interior and found a table in the corner. The place was as unremarkable as it looked outside, dim lights, sticky floors, and the faint smell of spilled beer. But the occasional patron slipping into a back corner and not returning suggested something more. "I'll check out that back corner. You stay here and try not to attract too much attention," Eli whispered, already getting up from the table. Derren gave her a lazy salute. "Stay out of trouble, boss." Eli navigated her way to the back, where she found a door that seemed almost ordinary. To an untrained eye, it might go unnoticed. She placed a hand on the wood and felt a subtle vibration, almost like the hum of a low, mystical current. With a glance over her shoulder, she stepped through. Beyond the door, the air shifted. The lighting turned softer, almost otherworldly, and she was greeted by a bouncer who glanced at her with disinterest before extending a hand. "Weapons in the box," he grunted. Eli reluctantly handed over a small silver dagger, a cherished blade she kept tucked in her boot. As it dropped into the box, she scanned the room. Creatures of all shapes and sizes mingled openly, some with wings, others with scales, a few with features that defied even her understanding. They seemed relaxed, as if this place was a neutral zone, safe from the troubles of the outside world. The tables were decorated with glowing orbs, and strange, iridescent liquids bubbled in glasses that seemed to change colour with each sip. A troll with 3 eyes chatted amicably with a fairy dressed in what looked like leather armour, while a cloaked figure that seemed half shadow, half human, haggled over the price of a gleaming artifact. Eli kept her guard up, fascinated but wary. As interesting as this world was, she knew better than to let down her defences. After making a mental note of her surroundings, she turned to head back to Derren, eager to share what she had seen. Back in the human side of the bar, however, Derren was, well, predictably distracted. After leaving Eli to explore, Derren strolled over to the bar, where a striking woman with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes was giving him a curious look. Her gaze was intense, and he felt a strange warmth wash over him as he met her eyes. "Hey there, name's Derren. Mind if I join you?" he asked, flashing his most charming smile. "Not at all," she replied, her voice smooth and inviting. "I'm Rose. So, what brings a guy like you to a place like this?" "Oh, just taking in the ambience," Derren said, giving her a wink. "It's not every day you run into someone with your style." Rose leaned in, her eyes glittering with something more than interest. "Careful, Derren. You might just find yourself in over your head." Derren chuckled, feeling more and more at ease in her presence, as if he'd known her forever. He blinked, finding himself leaning closer to her, unable to pull away from her gaze. His head felt fuzzy, almost as if he were in a trance, the world around him dimming until it was just her and those piercing green eyes. Just then, a sharp smack landed on the back of his head, snapping him out of his daze. Derren jerked forward and turned to find Eli standing there, arms crossed and an unimpressed look on her face. "Seriously?" she said, glaring at him. "I leave you alone for 5 minutes, and you're already under some spell?" Rose raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the interruption. "Jealous girlfriend?" she asked with a playful smirk. "Not exactly. Eli replied, rolling her eyes. He just has a knack for flirting with the wrong type. Derren looked between them, rubbing the back of his head. What just happened? Nothing good, Eli said, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from Rose. She cast a glance back at the redhead, her expression cold. Come on, lover boy. Time to go. Rose simply watched them with a bemused smile, waving her fingers at Derren as he was dragged away. See you around, Derren. Once they were back outside, Eli finally let go of his arm and gave him a sharp look. Do you have any idea what you just walked into? Derren shrugged, still a bit dazed. Not really. I mean, she seemed nice enough. Eli groaned. That was no ordinary woman. She was casting a spell on you. You'd be halfway to telling her your life story if I hadn't stepped in. Hey, I didn't know, Derren protested, holding up his hands defensively. How was I supposed to tell? Well, maybe by not flirting with random women in a bar while we're on a mission, she shot back. You're lucky I caught it in time. She could have had you wrapped around her finger. Derren shrugged sheepishly. I guess I owe you one. Thanks, Eli. Just try to stay focused next time, she replied, giving him a playful nudge. I can't be saving you from every pretty face you see. As they walked back to the Wolfmobile, Derren glanced back at the bar, half expecting to see Rose watching them. But the doorway was empty, and the night seemed eerily quiet. He sighed, sliding into the passenger seat as Eli started the engine. Remind me to buy you a drink next time, he said, flashing her a grin. Or maybe two. One for saving me from that spell, and another for putting up with me. Eli laughed as she drove off, shaking her head. You'll need more than a drink to make up for that one, Derren. Now let's get back and debrief. This place is more dangerous than it looks. Back at the workshop, Derren and Eli found themselves seated in the large, round debriefing room. The entire pack was gathered, each person listening with rapt attention as Eli recounted what they had discovered about the Shadow Realm bar. Gunnar, the pack's stoic leader, sat at the head of the table, his arms crossed and his gaze thoughtful as he absorbed every detail. Beside him, Eliana Vale, their resident elf and magical consultant, leaned forward with interest, her silver hair reflecting the dim light of the room. Once Eli finished recounting the events, Derren added, And then there's Rose. Not exactly the friendliest character, but she's powerful. Eli thinks she might be preying on human guys in the bar, but I didn't catch on until I was under her spell. Eliana narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. A dark elf, like Rose in a place like that? It's curious, but it makes sense. Earth has always been a haven of sorts for the supernatural. It's diverse, open, and, to beings from other realms, it's an unregulated playground. Gunnar nodded, digesting this information. So they're here because it's easy to blend in among humans? Sounds plausible. But it makes me wonder, why are they here in the first place? What exactly draws them to Earth? Eliana offered a soft, mysterious smile. Earth is unique, Gunnar. Most other realms are more rigid, defined by strict laws and old hierarchies. Earth, by contrast, is free, unpredictable. To some, it's an ideal escape. For others, it's an opportunity to explore a new dimension where rules are more fluid and life is constantly evolving. So you're saying they're here for a vacation? Derren asked, a bit incredulous. Eliana nodded. Some, yes. Earth's diversity is unmatched, both culturally and environmentally. Many find it refreshing. For beings used to structured realms, Earth feels alive. And the naivete of humans? Well, that only makes it easier for them to walk among us unnoticed. Humans rarely suspect the supernatural. Clara chimed in, rubbing her temples. But we've seen it firsthand. Not all these visitors come with good intentions. Some of them cause chaos, whether intentional or not. We can't ignore that. Gunnar nodded, leaning back in his chair with a sigh. We need to consider our approach here. We can't exactly run around town policing every supernatural being. But if we're dealing with threats like Rose, we might need to get creative. I'm thinking about magical inhibitors, Something we could use on the most dangerous visitors to restrict their powers while they're here. It wouldn't have to be permanent, just enough to keep them in check. Eliana raised an eyebrow. You're talking about magical inhibitors? That's tricky business. Restricting magic can have unpredictable consequences, especially with powerful beings. If it's not handled delicately, it could backfire. Jewel added, but it could work. In my medical experience, temporary suppressants could prevent a lot of harm without being invasive. I could even oversee their effects to make sure there's no adverse reaction. Eli nodded thoughtfully. It's a solid idea, but Rose is a whole other level. I've seen her kind of magic before. Fire magic. She's powerful, and she's not afraid to wield it. She was hanging out on the human side of the bar, which makes me think she might be preying on human men. From what I could tell, she enjoys toying with them, maybe even using them. Derren's face darkened. I'm no expert, but something tells me that a person like Rose wouldn't stop at just a casual, hello. It was like she wanted something from me, and I was none the wiser until Eli smacked me back to reality. Eliana looked thoughtful. If Rose is targeting humans, she might be feeding on more than just attention. Some dark elves use their magic to absorb energy, especially from unsuspecting humans. It could be as harmless as drawing on their life force for sustenance, or it could be much darker. Clara folded her arms, her face stern. If she's feeding on humans, she's more than just a nuisance. She's a threat. And if she's hanging out in the Shadow Realm bar, she's not the only one we have to worry about. DeSera spoke up, her voice tinged with curiosity. So what exactly is the Shadow Realm bar? I mean, beyond the dive bar we saw on the surface. Eliana sighed, as if grappling with how best to describe the otherworldly place. It's a sanctuary for supernatural beings, a neutral ground of sorts. On the surface, it's just a bar, but beyond a seemingly ordinary door in the back, accessible only to those with supernatural blood or a whispered invitation, lies the true Shadow Realm bar. This hidden sanctuary is worlds apart from the gritty exterior, transforming into a haven for creatures from all realms. Here, they can drop their disguises, interact freely, and trade artifacts or favors without fear of exposure. Eli nodded, adding, I saw it myself. It's surreal, like a marketplace and a bar rolled into one, but with this strange energy in the air. There are symbols on the walls, enchanted artifacts everywhere, and creatures I couldn't even begin to identify. It's like they have their own truce in there, where even rivals abide by some code of neutrality. Are you saying we can't touch them in there? Derren asked, clearly frustrated by the idea. It's not about can't, it's about shouldn't, Eliana replied. The truce holds because it's mutually beneficial. If anyone, be it human, elf, or otherwise, disturbs that balance, the repercussions could extend far beyond that bar. Gunner's gaze was steely as he looked at each member of the pack. We can't afford to ignore this place, it's too much of a liability. But we need to be careful. For now, let's focus on gathering intel. Eli, Derren, you two did well on recon, but if we're going to move forward, we'll need to understand this place inside and out. The goal is containment, not confrontation. If we have to take action, we do it without disrupting their world. The room fell silent as the team processed this. Finally, Eliana spoke, her voice firm yet compassionate. We've walked this line before, Gunner. We can handle it. But we need to be mindful of what we're up against. Supernatural beings don't think like humans, and they don't play by human rules. They're here for various reasons: escape, opportunity, curiosity. But that doesn't mean they're all harmless. Jewel nodded, looking at Gunner. We'll be ready for whatever comes. But you're right. We need to get those inhibitors ready. If we can manage the worst offenders, we might be able to keep this from turning into a full-blown conflict. Agreed, Gunner said, standing up. We'll start developing those inhibitors. And in the meantime, Eliana, keep your ears open for any new intel. The rest of us will stay on alert. If Rose or any other dangerous beings cross our paths, we'll be ready. As they began to wrap up, Eli glanced over at Derren. Maybe next time you'll think twice before letting some mystery woman put you under her spell. Derren grinned, not missing a beat. Hey, I had it under control. Sort of. Besides, I knew you'd have my back. The pack chuckled, the camaraderie palpable despite the serious nature of their mission. They knew the risks they faced, but with each other, they also knew they had a fighting chance. As they filed out of the room, Gunner's voice echoed behind them. Remember, folks, in this game, knowledge is power. The more we know, the better we can protect what's ours. Let's get to work. And with that, they set out, prepared to face whatever mysteries and dangers the Shadow Realm Bar and its supernatural patrons had in store for them.
Well, you found your way to the end, haven't you? That must mean you're curious, and we love curiosity around here. Before you vanish into the ether, take a moment to subscribe. It's just a click, and trust me, you'll want to stay in the loop for what comes next. And while you're at it, give the video a like. The energy exchange is good for you. Hit that notification bell too. You wouldn't want to miss out on any of our magical misadventures. Who knows what I might conjure up next? Alright, off you go. But remember, I'll know if you didn't subscribe. See you on the other side.